Just a quick disclaimer, I've been driving this through a lot of bugs lately. I suppose it's about time that I do a dedicated video to everything I know as far as the statistics and numbers and model, all the specs for my step van. So that's what this video is about. Hopefully it'll answer a lot of those frequently asked questions that you might have all in one place in one video. This is a 1996 Grumman-Olsen with a Freightliner MT45 frame under chassis. Just a quick disclaimer, I've been driving this through a lot of bugs lately, and so I haven't had a chance to clean it, so there's lots of insects that are just smashed everywhere. So anyway, just want to let you know that it doesn't normally look like this. I bought my step van in April of 2017. I bought it in northern Washington, north of Seattle, about an hour, from a private individual. I think I'm probably the fourth owner of this. Originally it was owned by a diesel service repair company, and sometimes on the side up here, when it's raining, after the rain and in just the right lighting, you can see the ghost image of a diesel repair company. It was called Trans-Chicago Diesel Service Company or something like that. And at one point I called up there and spoke with the service manager trying to find out about the engine and a couple of the repairs. And he was actually the same guy that worked there back in 1995, 1996, but he didn't remember this particular unit. I have to say, it's sort of fun to open the hood on this. This is the latch here. You just pull out on this portion and then it releases, and you just sort of let it fall off to the side like this when you open it up. And to put it back, you've got to line this up into this little slot, and then you close it like this and it latches shut. The engine in here is a Cummins 5.9. This particular model is known as the 6BT. 6 is for 6-cylinder. B is for Generation B. I think this is the second generation of this particular style. And the T is for turbo. At least that's my understanding. There's a big oversized radiator here. I replaced the radiator cap and it was leaking and spewing out coolant when I purchased it. Just some thoughts on the coolant that it takes. Later models of this particular Cummins motor take a special kind of coolant that is made specifically for diesels. This particular model, the 6BT from 1996, takes the regular green coolant, the same as you put in an automobile of that era. So I can buy green coolant. The reason I mention this is because someone thought maybe I was putting the wrong coolant in here, and I went to a Cummins dealer and they looked it up and they told me to put regular green coolant. So there you go. When I bought the step van, I bought it with 10,000 miles on it. I know that sounds incredible, impossible, that somebody must have rolled the old odometer or something like that, but all indicators are that it's actually 10,000 miles. When mechanics have been pulling apart mechanical parts on it, they're telling me things look new. The tires were the original 1995 tires with full treads, and still a little bit of the rubber nubs, those little things that stick out on them. So it was really in pristine condition. The transmission fluid and the transmission gasket and the pan underneath appears to be original. The original filters, a lot of stuff on it was just original stuff. The downside to that is it sat in a warehouse for many years, or like 20 years, not being driven. And so there was even like a bird's nest in the back and the top and the little support ribs. A lot of the rubber parts needed to be replaced, like the serpentine belt. I need to replace the hoses, replaced all of the tires. So those are the kinds of things that it needs, but not much else. Just greasing, oiling, and replacing rubber parts. There is a little bit of work that needs to be done with the electronics just from corrosion, being in the Washington environment where it's a little bit more humid, and so so a lot of the ground wires and things like that have sort of become a little faulty because of the corrosion. But overall, it's really in pristine and excellent condition, particularly the metal parts. I get asked a lot about the fuel mileage here for the step van. The step van gets between 12 and 18 miles per gallon. That's using diesel. It seems like the biggest factor for driving in this is not so much how much I'm carrying, not really how many hills or mountains I'm climbing. It seems to be the wind. When I'm driving with a good, really strong wind coming from the back, like 40 miles an hour from the back, I can get 18 miles a gallon on flat land, and I've done that before. However, if I'm going into that same wind, then it can drop down to 12 miles per gallon. However, if I have no wind, just calm air, driving on flat ground, I get about 14 miles per gallon. I think that's pretty good for a vehicle this size. Speaking of vehicle size, this is a 26-foot long vehicle. That's from front bumper to back bumper. It's about 25 feet from the front headlight to the rear tail light. But as you can see, the bumper on the back hangs off a good 8 or 9 inches, something like that. This is called an 18-foot step van. And what that means is behind the driver's seat, the cargo area where the normal partition wall would be, all the way to the back doors, is 18 feet. The downside for that is that most parking spots are 22 feet. So like parallel parking, if you're looking at from one line to the next line, most cities is 22 feet. If you're looking for a step van to fit inside that 22-foot parking spot, you want to look for the 14-foot step van. These are the most popular that are used by FedEx, UPS, delivery companies, because they fit into those parking spaces. So this is too large to fit into a normal parking space. I end up parking across 2 spaces, or I have to back the bumper up onto a sidewalk, something like that. My step van is all aluminum for the box itself, and that's typical of Grumman-Olsen. I believe they're an aircraft company, so they're really known for aluminum manufacturing. They make the box on top. So Grumman-Olsen makes the box on the top, and then all of the mechanical components, the frame, the drivetrain, all of that kind of stuff is assembled and put together by Freightliner. It has a Cummins engine inside of it with an Allison transmission. I'm not exactly sure the transmission model, but I was told by one mechanic that it's a 543. I don't know if that's exactly true or not. It is 4-speed automatic. Some step vans have one door on the passenger side, and this area here will be completely sealed. Other step vans have 2 doors. Mine is the 2-door model. From what I've seen, there's basically 3 different configurations for doors in the back of step vans. The most common is a roll-up door. The door rolls up into the top onto the ceiling. It's super easy for access, particularly for delivery type situations. For service vehicles and a few other models, you'll end up having the swing doors. Typically it's 2 narrow doors like I have, and then the side panels here. And that's because you have shelves running front to back on the side walls, so you can't really get access to that area, so it makes sense just to do 2 narrow doors in the middle. And also when the doors are opened, they're not going to swing out into a street or get clipped or something else happen to them. However, there is another model that I like a lot, and it has 4 panels for the doors. So there's a door panel here, another door panel here, and then the split between the 2 doors, and then another is sort of an accordion door style. I really like that model. That's the model I was looking for, and if you can find that one, that's the one I would highly recommend, just because that way you can expose the entire back area and open it up completely. I think that's a better option. I would advise against getting the roll-up door if you're looking at using this for a camper conversion or tiny house conversion, just because you lose the ceiling space up on top. It's also harder to insulate. So I would highly recommend you look for one of the door varieties, either the one like I have, or even better if you can get the accordion door model. This particular step van has 19.5-inch tires. I believe that's actually the rim size, but when you're asking for tires, you ask for the 19.5. I have all new tires all the way around. They were quite expensive, but I went for the top of the line. They were a little bit over $2,000 for 6 tires, but again, I was going for safety, top of the line. I knew I was going to be putting a lot of miles on this vehicle. The battery box is right underneath the front steps that come in from the passenger side. So basically your second step up is actually the lid to the battery box. So you just open that up, and inside there are 2 batteries, and that's typical for larger commercial diesel vehicles. Each of these is about 1,000 cranking amps, so very, very strong batteries. My particular step van, the previous owner had put in a master kill switch to cut off the power from the batteries to the rest of the vehicle. It's unsure if this was done for parasitic drain or if it was done for long-term storage. I'm guessing possibly, because it sat for so many years, this was a long-term storage option. Here's the kill switch. And I bought 1 battery, and 1 battery is original. And you lock it in place with this little rubber thing. Most step vans do not have air conditioning in them, not on the dash and not on the roof, and that's because they're opening the doors all day long, in and out, delivery, and sometimes driving around with the door open because they drive up 2 doors to a house, drop something off, drive another 4 doors to a house, drop something off. And so they just don't install AC in most of these step vans. That said, there are some models that they put AC in, and I've seen 2 different designs for the air conditioning. One is the typical design on the dash like you see in most vehicles, most cars, most trucks, something like that. And so it's built right into the center of the dash with your typical controls. Some of the other models that I've seen have air conditioning installed right here in the center of the top of the windshield. So there's a unit that will go right across the top of here, and then some controls on the bottom that you turn on, and it blows air downward towards the driver or the passenger. My step van does not have AC at all, so I just basically have to open up the doors like everyone else. I do have 1 little vent that I can open by my left leg, which is really super effective for bringing in air. It's a pretty cool little vent. Let me show you that. Here is the vent in the closed position. So the center lever here is in closed position, and if you want to bring in air from the front, suck it in while you're driving, you push it forward, and you can see that it opens up this direction so that it forms a vent to sort of suck air to the inside. However, if it's raining or something like that and you just want air to come in but you don't want it to suck the air in, you can go the opposite direction. I rarely use this particular position. I almost always use it in either fully off or in the open position like that. I'll show you what this looks like from the outside. So here's bringing air in, this is closed, and this is the other direction. Anyway, I love the design of that. It's really cool. I need to do some work to the heater controls and the dash controls. Just over age and not being used, the cables that connect the dash controls for the heater unit out to underneath the hood in the engine area, those are gummed up and they're not moving properly or they're broken. So I have 3 cables I need to replace, and in the time that I've had the step van and trying to work on those, I ended up breaking a couple of the knobs that actually go on these control units. So anyway, I'll show you the controls for the heat and lights and all that kind of stuff. So over here we have the control that goes to a cable for the vent underneath. There's a blend air door, and this cable goes in there to control if you're bringing in fresh air from the outside with it open, or if you close that door, then it's going to recirculate inside. Over here is the heat control. This is for defroster versus the heat coming out underneath the dash here. This is the blower control. There's a 2-speed motor. Somebody at some point has replaced the original motor with a 1-speed motor, which is what confused us for quite a while. I need to replace the motor yet again and get the proper 2-speed motor. Right now I have it in the middle position, which according to our testing is giving no power to the unit, whereas when it was in this upper or lower position, it was giving power of different voltage to the motor. So anyway, I've got it actually in off, even though it looks like low. Over here, windshield wipers were not working when I purchased it, and they are now. I need to do some cleanup work eventually with that, but basically if you push down on this button, it will give you your fluid for adding fluid to the wiping motion, and that's not working. So anyway, you just press down on that and that's what happens there. Here is your hot and cold temperature for the heater. Again, this is not working, need to reconnect the cable there. And then the light switch, which is a pull light switch. And then underneath is a black plug where there would normally be an air conditioning indication control. One thing I found out when I pulled that panel off is there's 2 light bulbs that are just sort of floating around under there. They don't seem to be attached to anything, plugged into anything. My friend James theorized that maybe they were originally used for something like the AC. I guess that's plausible. But the other night I was driving this and I came up with another theory. I was able to adjust the brightness of the dash lights, and I didn't know how to do that. You actually just twist that knob, the headlight knob, and then they go brighter or dimmer. But when I twisted them up to maximum brightness, what I found out is all the white text on this panel will start glowing. Apparently this is a translucent piece of plastic, and the areas that are white underneath, for whatever reason, you can see through. So they sort of glow very, very lightly, and you can start seeing the print for those particular controls. It's a very unique design. I've never seen this before in any vehicle that I've owned. Anyway, I don't have any video of that right now. My step van does not have glow plugs. The Cummins 6BT uses kind of a heater bar that is right next to the cylinders. So basically when you turn the key, a little light comes on. It's an amber light with a little fuel symbol, and that comes on for a few seconds, indicating that the heater bar is preheating the fuel before it goes into the cylinders, and then when it goes off, it's okay to start the vehicle. The cigarette lighter is mounted right on the side of the gear shift. It's sort of an odd place. It took me probably 2 or 3 weeks to find this. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the pocket doors. They're a little bit unique in that they hang inside of a track, so they hang from the top and they sort of roll in this slot, this pocket. Although they're really interesting and really fun, they're probably the weakest point in a step van in my opinion, in that they can't be really insulated very well, at least mine are not. I'd like to figure out better ways to insulate them. I can feel cold air drafts going around inside the pocket area of the door. And they rattle a lot as they're just sort of floating in this pocket area and vibrating back and forth. But I want to show you the door mechanism. So the door mechanism is right here. You can see that you have a paddle type thing that you can move back and forth. It lifts up this sort of hook here as you need to go in and out. On the outside there's this larger handle here with a push button for the lock mechanism. That's all I have for the statistics and stats and all of the information about my step van. I hope I've covered everything. If you have questions about other things I may or may not know the answer to, please write some comments below. Hope you enjoyed this video. Savor the moment. Hope to see you in another video.